Hello, friends, and welcome to the show. So, getting started, California Democrats scramble to fight Newsom recall. Closing ranks. California Democrats are suddenly waking up to a nightmarish reality that in their solidly blue state, a small but determined band of GOP activists may soon set off a recall that puts Governor Gavin Newsom's future in doubt. Alarmed party leaders facing the threat of a chaotic and expensive election by the end of this year have begun to issue all hands on deck calls, but it may already be too late to convince the disorderly Democratic ranks to put aside their political differences and, in some cases, ambitions and stand in unity with their embattled governor. Every credible leader should be speaking out loudly and forcefully now, said State Senator Steve Glazer, a former senior advisor to Governor Jerry Brown. The message must be about why even unhappy Californians should not sign these poisonous petitions, he said in an interview. Our collective action should be all about reducing signatures that would create this political chaos. So why are they trying to suppress voters? I thought that's something only Republicans do, right? Republicans wish to suppress the vote, or so I'm told. Yet you have a senior advisor, you have a state senator saying we need to suppress this recall vote. That is disgusting. It's either, like I said, like I always preach, we need to have one standard. Having multiple standards only leads to division because guess what? You're just going to further polarize the country. And that is bananas that you have a state senator, Steve Glazer, who's basically coming out and just saying it out loud, saying, we need to suppress this vote. We need to demoralize people. And that is disgusting. But time is running out, he conceded. It's really only about the next 30 days when the recall campaign must show evidence they've collected 1.5 million valid signatures. Oh, now they have to be validated. The signatures need to be validated. They can't just I guess now you have to show IDs and they're going to do signature verifications. That's it's just such BS coming from the Democrats right now that my head is going to explode. Newsom spent months focusing on reining in the coronavirus pandemic and working with local officials to open and reclose businesses and places of worship. He also pushed hard, yet mostly unsuccessfully, to reopen schools. While Newsom and the Democratic Party tried to keep the messaging on coronavirus, his opponents ramped up the effort to recall him, approaching the required number of valid signatures in a state with a low bar for instigating a gubernatorial recall. Lieutenant Governor Eleni Konalakis, I can't pronounce that, is now asking Democrats to stand against the recall. California voters elect their lieutenant governor separately from the top office, so she's not in jeopardy should Newsom be ousted. But I still can't pronounce that name, sees it as a cynical GOP attempt to sidestep a regular election cycle. Republicans see this quirky opportunities to slip a Republican governor into the bluest state in the union, she said in an interview, and I think they are daydreaming. But Matt Schupa, GOP strategist, said that the Democrats and Newsom are clearly flailing as they attempt to counter this successful drive. California, in all types of ways, is in really dire situation right now, Shoup said. The recall, he added, is a way to fix the state with someone to vote for, not just vote against. Newsom last week teased an agreement with teachers and their unions to reopen schools, but on Tuesday said no agreement is ready. The inability to reopen schools may become another political liability for the governor as he works to preserve his job. And basically, they go on to talk about how there hasn't been a Republican in California as a governor since Arnold Schwarzenegger. So it's bananas that now that basically Democrats' heads are on the chopping block for their incompetence in dealing with the coronavirus, that now they want to do signature verifications. They'll probably want to do ID matching. They're practicing all these voter suppression tactics, right? I'm told this is voter suppression. And they're going to say, well, we want election integrity. Basically, what the Republicans have been saying. Hey, I have 4 different types of federal or state ID in my wallet that I could use to go vote. Yet, I'm told that as a person of color, that I am too uneducated to use the internet to figure out where I need to go vote, to figure out how to get an ID, to figure out how to be an adult. So these white liberals who tell me that I am too stupid to figure it out, well, apparently they're too stupid to understand that the majority of people do have some sort of ID, and it is not suppression to ask for an ID. Is it smoking suppression to ask for ID? Is it drinking suppression to ask for an ID? Is it gun suppression to ask for an ID? Probably not. So again, it's bananas, the type of mental gymnastics that Democrats and their leaders often go through to basically try to call Republicans a bunch of racist bigots. So let's jump over to the next story from Politico. President Joe Biden's presidency hinges in large part on his success in handling the pandemic, but nearly a month into power, he's beginning to discover just how much of that task is out of his control. Well, I was told for a year that every little thing that happened that every little thing that happened while Trump was president was Trump's fault. I'm sure you're old enough to remember that too if you're listening to me. 400,000 deaths were all Trump's fault. Never mind the fact that Andrew Cuomo was hiding the amount of deaths in nursing homes so the Department of Justice wouldn't basically bust his balls. He broke the law. He is now under investigation because of what he did. Yet somehow that's all Trump's fault. Or how California is doing very, very bad, even though they have been locked down essentially nonstop for nearly a year. In San Francisco, you have more deaths due to overdose than you had from coronavirus. And guess what? That was still Trump's fault. No. It should be Gavin Newsom's fault. It should be Andrew Cuomo's fault. Because guess what? We do have a federalist system of government. The president basically says, this is my vision. And then the states will implement that vision, right? And he says, and basically he ties federal funding to his vision. So it's kind of bananas. So before I get to the actual story, why don't you go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you'd like to contribute to the show, because I've already started making changes to the website, it's going to take a few days. I spent about 5 hours last night working on this. Basically, I'm starting up a news aggregator. I'm also starting up a fact checker. And it would really help us out if you were to donate, because it is a one-man operation and I don't have any sponsors or anything like that because I wish to stay independent from outside influence. You can go to notcensoredyet.com/donate. You'll find links available to help contribute to the show. So let's go to Politico. Tensions start to emerge in Biden's dance with governors. President Joe Biden's presidency hinges in large part on his success in handling the pandemic, but nearly a month into power, he's beginning to discover just how much of that task is out of his control. The White House is locked in a delicate dance with governors over reopening schools, distributing COVID shots, and enforcing mask mandates, with Biden's team wary of alienating key state leaders, even as it takes stock of the lurching response to the crisis. Governors, in turn, are starting to push back on the first federal efforts to pressure them. The administration has poured energy into courting both Democrats and Republicans, pitching itself as an equal partner and eager collaborator. It's a sharp contrast from the Trump era when most decisions were thrown to the states. And it's a decent bet that facing a fatigued public and teetering economy, even the most skeptical governors need Biden just as much as he needs them. This whole time, governors have felt like they're the ones under the gun, said one advisor to several governors. They understand the way this has been set up. People are inclined to blame them if things don't go well. Well, again, we have a federalist system of government. We don't have a monarch. We don't have a king. We don't have a dictator. We don't have a fascistic leader. Oh, well, I guess we do now, considering that we have thousands of National Guard troops surrounding Washington, D.C., because a democratically elected president doesn't need 5,000 National Guard troops to surround him. If it was a legitimate, if everything seemed on the up and up, you wouldn't feel the need to have several thousand National Guard troops around you, because if you have so many questions, you're not going to say just shut up. And if you don't shut up, we have National Guard troops here who are going to shoot you with a machine gun. And Nancy Pelosi had her way. So again, what sounds more legitimate? I'm not even going to get into that because I'm pretty sure I'll get in trouble here on YouTube. Yet the federal government's charm offensive threatens to bog down Biden's early efforts to rein in the virus and claim political credit for restoring a sense of normalcy. So again, why would he claim political credit? He lied when he said there was no vaccine. I'm old enough to remember when Joe Biden received the vaccine before he even became the president. So for him to say, "Well, there was no vaccine when I was the president, there was no vaccine," it's like stupid man. You received the vaccine. Don't tell me you didn't have it. Don't tell me it wasn't available because you received it. It's bananas, and nobody's fact checking. They just say, "Oh, because of his stutter and he has gaffes." And it's like, "Oh, so you're saying he's old and he can't remember where he's at? He can't remember receiving a vaccine?" And yet this man is supposed to be the president of the United States. You kidding me? Oh, man, some people. The White House has resisted ordering states to let teachers jump the vaccine line, even as it struggles to convince educators to return to school. Biden officials have also held off on criticizing certain governors for easing mask mandates and restrictions on indoor gatherings, despite fears that emerging more contagious COVID 19 variants could fuel a new surge. So it's working well for Florida. So maybe Joe Biden should use Florida as an example for the rest of the country. Florida is in the middle of the pack middle of the pack, and they have one of the least restrictive COVID measures in the country. So I don't understand what the issue is. If you're severely locked down, like in California, yet you are doing worse, or you're because California is not exactly apples to apples with Florida because they have a lot more people, or we'll say New York or New Jersey. New Jersey is a lot smaller than Florida, but they have way more deaths than Florida. So we need to basically do apples to apples. So let's do New York versus Florida. Their populations are similar in size. And if New York is locked down shut and they're doing horribly, and Florida is not locked down and they're doing okay, they're doing better than average, then maybe New York should try it Florida's way and see how that works out. Because obviously, what New York is, whatever New York is doing, they're not doing it well. So perhaps they should change up their game plan. It would be like you're playing a football game and you're running a power option play, and every time you run the power option, you get sacked. And you just don't change it up. And it's like, hey, you need to change it up if it's not working. If every time you try to do a particular thing, it gets shut down, yet you keep doubling down on that, you're just basically practicing an act of insanity. You're just doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Our strong partnership with states over the last several weeks is helping us vaccinate more people, a White House spokesperson said, adding that the administration is in constant contact with governors. Still, the White House has taken longer than expected to line up its public messaging, leaving it on the defensive as Republicans step up their attacks over the failure to reopen schools and frustrating some allies who warn that Biden will soon need to take a stronger stand. So it's always Republicans attack, Republicans pounce, Republicans seize the opportunity. No, if a Democrat screws up and a Republican calls them out on it, it's not seizing on the opportunity. It's saying, you said you had a plan. You said if we elected you, you would crush the virus. You wouldn't crush the economy. You wouldn't crush jobs. You wouldn't crush Americans. You would crush the virus. Yet all you're doing is crushing the economy, crushing jobs, crushing families. You're crushing women in the workforce. You're crushing everybody else, anything else other than the virus. Yet you've had a year basically sharp shooting Trump from the tower, basically taking pot shots at him and saying, hey, you messed up on this. Hey, you messed up on that. Hey, you're not going to figure this out. And then as soon as Biden becomes the president and Republicans start doing the same thing, basically saying, you had all this time where you weren't responsible for anything and you claimed that you had the magic recipe for success and you're somehow doing a worse job than Trump. And yet that's seizing the moment. That's stepping up the attack over failures. No, that's called, we're calling you out. I'm not even a Republican, but we're calling you out for lying. And that's BS. One senior Democratic official close to the discussions between the White House and the states and administration was taken aback by the initial pushback on reopening from some districts. But that should serve as a wake up call, the official said, that Biden will need to be more forceful, even at the risk of rankling some governors. There are policy choices that you have to make here. And if one is we want schools open, then go and vaccinate teachers. There's no winning on these things. You have to make a decision and then you have to move forward. So it's hit or miss on that one, right? Biden can't force anybody to do anything as the president of the United States. Now, if he wants to basically say, well, you won't receive federal funding for that, basically through an executive action, that's something he can do, but he can't just say, hey, you're going to open whether you like it or not, because that would make him a dictator. That would make him a monarch. And as Joe Biden eloquently put it before he was elected, dictators only governed by executive order. But unfortunately, that's all Joe Biden has done. There has been no legislation pushed through the Congress. And that's kind of disgusting, where Joe Biden needs to sign over 50 executive actions at this point, I believe, and zero legislation has even crossed into Congress because they're too busy worrying about attacking the orange man. First, they had to impeach him. Now they're trying to make it so he can't run for office because he was impeached 2 times. They are violating the Constitution. They're violating the 14th Amendment. They are violating the norms of this country. And yet people are cheering it on because somehow Donald Trump ruffled people's feathers. He made people feel the sads. And I guess Americans, we shouldn't feel sad, friends. And so the only way to not feel sad is to not allow Donald Trump to run for president again. Norms be damned. Constitution be damned. Because I'm pretty sure the 14th Amendment in there, it says that unless you're a criminal or you've been prosecuted for basically impeached and all these things, there's a list of things that you cannot have done in order to run for public office. And since Donald Trump has been exonerated from all of those things, then therefore he should be allowed to run for office again. But the House Democrats are trying to change that because they don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about you. Because guess what? At a certain point, if they think they can get away with that, eventually they're going to push it and say, well, no libertarian can run for office. No progressive can run for office. No conservative can run for office because they don't care. And that's going to be the slippery slope. So that's going to be it for now, friends. I'll be posting up another video here in a couple hours. Until then, I'll see you all later. Have a good one. Bye.